Hello again, boxing fans. I'm Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly. You're watching the Neutral Corner for the week of August 12th. Couple of quick housekeeping notes real quick. First of all, want to give a shout out and a thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. Guys, if you haven't checked it out yet, go to patreon.com/MonteroOnBoxing. Thank you so much. We've been at it for 2 months now, and we really thank all of you who have contributed and become part of the team. Also, we're not going to have a Neutral Corner episode for next week. We're actually, since there's no fights coming up, no big fights coming up this weekend, we're going to go ahead and preview the big card on ESPN, Crawford-Indongo, in this episode, even though it's coming up 2 weekends from now. So we're going to do one episode over the next 2 weeks. We'll be off next week, but we're going to have some videos on the channel. Don't worry about that. We'll have some stuff coming out for you. And then the Neutral Corner will be back after the Crawford-Indongo fight, the week after that fight. So enough of that. Let's get into some news and notes. So today, just out of curiosity, I decided to go to Ticketmaster and a couple other sites. I think I went to like StubHub and places where you can grab tickets, you know, secondary market tickets and stuff like that, just to see what the ticket sales look like for the shit show, just for fun. And it was fun because I saw that pretty much every single section, except for the suites, which was a casino buy anyway, no fans got those tickets. Every section in the arena still has tickets available. Some sections had well over 50 or 60 high-priced tickets. I'm talking $2,000 or more still available. So all the brokers that bought in, the high-end guys, they probably will make their money back, but a lot of brokers are taking a fucking bath on the shit show, and I kind of love it. You know, look, obviously they're going for the pay-per-view buys with this event, Mayweather-McGregor. I get that. There's a huge anti-piracy thing that they're doing. They're really trying to catch anybody that's doing streams. Well, guess what? There's still going to be free streams, but they really are spending a ton of money and allocating a lot of technology to quelling that. So the pay-per-view numbers are going to be a representation of you know, what was bought. There's going to be a lot less streaming of this card than some other big cards recently. But all that being considered, I think this thing is going to be not a financial failure. Obviously, it's going to make money. But the ticket sales are already way behind what they were anticipating. And anyone who tells you otherwise is full of shit. They are lying to you. And I love it because the whole thing is a shit show. It's a slap in the face to boxing. The egos involved are basically trying to butt in to this glamour party we're having right now in the sport in this Renaissance year. We're having some great fighters recently retire, call it quits after Hall of Fame careers. And this shit show is in the middle of all of it. And I just, you know, I can't help it. I know I'm not covering the event. You guys know this. I've declined opportunities to make money covering it. But every now and then I do talk about it. Yeah, it's part of the story and what's going on. And I love that this thing is tanking. It's not doing anywhere near the business the people predicted. And I can't wait till August 27th. I just can't wait because there's a lot of you who have been commenting on my videos on this channel. You know, I think I did 2 videos on this channel about the shit show saying, you know, don't say I didn't tell you, you know, stuff like that. And a lot of you were commenting on there, calling me names, saying you're sure that Conor's gonna pull the upset, blah, 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 defending this bullshit. I can't wait till August 27th. And I'm gonna have a special video for you motherfuckers. It's gonna be real fun. Now, let's get into some drama. Right? We go from the shit show to tabloid bullshit. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I know some of you guys eat it up because I saw it all over my Twitter. Amir Khan, apparently his wife, who is basically the girl you fuck, the girl you have fun with, not the girl you marry, not the girl you take home to mom, not the girl you even show publicly on your social media accounts, the girl that you have a good time with. Well, he married that girl and had a kid with her. And apparently she cheated on him. Now, look, from what I hear, there's been infidelity on both sides of this thing, and it's been a shit show from the beginning. Amir Khan went on Twitter breaking up with her and alluded that Anthony Joshua is the guy she cheated on him with. I have no idea if there's any validity to any of it. I don't give a shit. I really don't care what's going on in these people's personal lives unless it's breaking a law, unless it's affecting their career. Amir Khan at this point, his career is done. You know, he's going to, of course, have another big money fight here or there just because of his name, and he'll wiggle his ass into some fight he doesn't deserve again at some point. It might be a domestic level thing against a Kell Brook or somebody like that. Okay. But his career is basically done. Right? What he's accomplished, what he was going to accomplish, he already has. So I don't really see this as a big deal. I don't see how it's going to affect his performance in any future fight or anything like that. There's nothing big on the line. It's not like he's going into some huge championship fight and there's problems at home. We've seen that with other fighters recently. You know, that was an issue with Vladimir Klitschko in a recent fight and some other guys. That's not what's going on here. If it was Anthony Joshua that smashed it, hey man, Anthony Joshua did what you're supposed to do with a girl like that. So I don't fault him at all. Now, if you're fucking with a married man's woman, okay, that's not cool. But we don't know the scenario. I really don't care to learn about the details or how legit any of this stuff is. It's Kim Kardashian bullshit, right? And I don't watch any of that reality TV crap. So going back full circle with shit show, tabloid, blah, blah, blah. Paulie Malignaggi. I guess he went to spar with Conor McGregor. And Paulie, look, in recent years, Paulie's turned into a bit of a corporate man over at Showtime CBS. He's been successful at it. I do think he's one of the better commentators in the game as far as being a former fighter. I think sometimes he plays favorites. He picks a side. I don't agree with his scoring on some fights. Sometimes he's on point, and then sometimes he does a complete 180. But he's turned into a little bit of a corporate slore. It's a term that my former boss at my old job used to use. It was a mixture of slut and whore. And she used to call some people corporate slores. And that, to me, is what Paulie's turned into. Anyway, to help build the shit show up, promote it, justify it a little bit, Paulie agreed to go into Conor McGregor's camp. How Paulie Malignaggi helps Conor McGregor prepare for Floyd Mayweather, I don't fucking know. In Paulie's prime, he had fast-ass hands. Just as fast as Floyd, maybe even a little faster. I know, I'm going to get some shit for saying that, but at his best. I'm talking at 140, 147 now. Floyd at 130, 135, that's a different story. But he hasn't fought in forever. He's fat, bloated, out of shape. Apparently, they had some sparring sessions, and Conor posts a picture of Paulie knocked down on the canvas, right? Making it seem like he dropped Paulie in sparring. Now, if any of you have seen any clips, any real unedited clips of Conor sparring, you know that that's probably bullshit. Even Paulie at this stage, that's probably bullshit. Paulie always had a good chin against boxers, like credible world-rated boxers, not a guy with horrible fundamentals like Conor McGregor. So, look, even if he did get dropped, who gives a fuck? It's sparring. Paulie was obviously taking it easy on the guy either way, whether he got dropped or not, to help the guy out. He was doing it as a favor. But Conor tweeted this thing out to piss Paulie off. He left camp, and now they've been yapping back and forth for the last week. Paulie got himself basically used as a cog in this wheel of trying to promote this thing that's not doing very well. It's well behind the projections all these analysts had for it. And so, and by the way, there's multiple sources reporting this. This isn't like me being a hater against Floyd or PBC or Showtime or whatever entity you want to attach this thing to. That's not what it is. There's plenty of insiders in the business talking about this, guys. So all this stuff, do I think it makes any difference? Does it change my opinion on the fight that potentially Conor McGregor dropped a semi-retired former boxer / analyst now? No. They probably tripped. It was a push. And being the douchebag piece of shit, the classless piece of shit Conor McGregor is, he took that opportunity to tweet out a picture to help promote the fight. It's the same fucking thing Floyd would have did. These two cocksuckers deserve each other. They're both pieces of shit. So Paulie trying to act surprised and outraged, you're being an idiot. Quit letting yourself be used as a pawn and just shut the fuck up and commentate the fight. I can't wait to see Paulie's scores for that fight. Jesus Christ. What a fucking circus. I can't believe some of you are paying for that shit. All right, moving on. Let's talk about some Top Rank on ESPN. And we'll talk more about the fights this past weekend in a second here. By the way, I did post a ringside reaction video just minutes after the Lomachenko Marriaga fight ended. Look for that on my channel and check that out, because that was like right after, and it gives you the gut feel for what I was feeling and what people at Press Row were feeling and everybody walking around the arena were feeling right there at that moment. But ESPN Top Rank, September 22nd. And I may have talked about this in the previous episode, but Gilberto Ramirez will be fighting Jesse Hart. Two undefeated fighters. I like that fight a lot. Also on that card, Oscar Valdez, Felix Verdejo, and Michael Conlan. So those of you who bitched and complained about this card, which really was a last-second fix, they wanted to do something else, but people pulled out and didn't want to play along, so it was damage control. This whole Lomachenko-Marriaga card was a clusterfuck. People of you out there complaining about that one. Well, you got Crawford-Indongo coming up, and then next month you've got all these fighters, undefeated prospects on one ESPN card. That's a solid card. Then in October, Jesse Magdaleno will be back in action. Artur Beterbiev will be back. We haven't seen him in a long time. That's a great doubleheader in October. In November, they're probably going to have a card with Jose Carlos Ramirez. He's an undefeated junior welterweight, 20-0, 15 knockouts from upstate California. And there will be a strong co-feature on that card as well, I'm sure. And then they're saying in December, Lomachenko returns. So if Manny Pacquiao comes back and fights Jeff Horn, and they're talking about doing that, it'll fall on either one of those dates. So you're going to have a real nice setup, a real nice schedule through the end of the year, one solid card a month, Top Rank on ESPN. So guys, this investment ESPN has into boxing right now, particularly with the Top Rank deal, it's a long-term deal. They are heavily invested. I know some things went on the other night during the Lomachenko-Marriaga card, which I'll get into in a second, that made it seem like they're not interested, that they were disrespecting boxing. Not the case, all right? It was a bumpy ride Saturday night, but long-term, there's a nice schedule here. Now, Top Rank has to eventually down the road work with other promoters for this thing to work, and I've talked about that. But so far, the schedule looks pretty tight. Okay, let's get into the review of what took place last week. So Friday, August 4th, it was Golden Boy Promotions on ESPN from Fantasy Springs Casino in Indio, California. Fun doubleheader here. Not elite level talent, not elite level fights or anything like that. This was what it was. It was a standard Friday night ESPN type of card, right? But the matchups and such were good, and there was blood and there was action in these fights. So Vasyl Lomachenko scores a 10th round stoppage over Todd Unthink May, who basically just ate a zillion punches in that fight. Showed a hell of a chin, but look, Shabransky doesn't move his head very much. Unthink May moved his head way less than him. He made Shabransky almost look like Pernell Whitaker at times. This guy Unthink May, I think he came into this fight undefeated. Man, solid whiskers, but just absolutely no defense. Either way, these guys were both throwing bombs. And Unthink May, he landed some shots too. Shabransky had to show a strong chin at times as well, but this thing really started to turn into a one-sided beatdown, an entertaining one, but it became in those last few rounds these were 10-8 rounds essentially. And finally the corners stopped the fight after the end of the 10th round, so it's a 10th round retirement win for Shabransky, who's now run off some wins, a few wins in a row after the pretty decisive knockout loss he suffered against Sullivan Barrera, who I think is an underrated fighter. For Shabransky, look, is he ever going to win world titles at light heavyweight? I don't think so. But he can be in exciting fights like this and entertaining fights like this. Sometimes he'll take two to give one, right? I do think he will challenge for a title at some point. He was moving his head a little bit more in this fight, showing a little more movement, but still just very, very stiff, and does not move side to side very well. And against the better, more elite level boxers at light heavyweight, he's always going to be a knockout waiting to happen. Either way, he continues to work himself back into a meaningful fight, and he remains a work in progress. Now in the main event, Mauricio Herrera improves to 24-7 with a majority decision win over Jesus Soto Karass. Two judges had it 96-94. One judge had it 95-95. For Herrera, he's a favorite at Golden Boy Promotions. He had some tough decisions that went against him in recent years. And you think back to that fight against Danny Garcia, which he arguably won and should have been the legitimate, linear, undisputed junior welterweight champion at that point. Could have changed the course of his life. You know, he could have had a 7-figure payday had that decision went his way. And he's had a couple decisions like that. Well, here in this fight, this was a close fight, entertaining. It started slow for me. Both guys looked slow and sluggish. But the last 3 rounds of this fight, the 8th, 9th, and especially that 10th round, were fucking great. Fun action. And as some of you will look at that and be like, oh, where's the craft, bro? Where's the fucking, where's the tuck and roll and all, where's the catch and shoot? Look, this was what it was, right? As advertised. Nobody was saying that this was pound for pound level stuff, but this was two guys who've been there, done that, been in their share of wars and tough fights, just putting it all on the line. Soto Karass is a much bigger guy, and there were times in the fight where he imposed his size on Herrera, but Herrera just has a little bit more craft. He has a little more layers to him, and that's why I thought he'd win this fight by decision. That's exactly what happens. Now, he came into this fight, this is a welterweight fight, but he came in weighing at just a little over 145, and he was at 140 as recently as 2015. I talked about the Danny Garcia fight and all that. I wonder if Herrera could get down to 140 pounds. I think the 140-pound division is about to be blown the fuck up, because I think you've got Crawford-Indongo coming up, and which I'll preview later in this episode, but I think that Crawford's going to probably win that fight and move up to 147. Those titles will become vacant. There's going to be a bunch of vacant titles open at 140. If you're Golden Boy Promotions and your team Mauricio Herrera and you're sitting back and watching this, if you can work yourself down to 140 and go for one of those vacant titles, Herrera might really have a shot. For Jesus Soto Karass, this is one last, day in the sun. I was going to say night in the sun. Day in the sun for him, right? It was one last hurrah. It was an entertaining, fun fight. If he wants to continue, he can, but I don't see why you would at this point. Hopefully, he's made enough money and he can walk away into the sunset. I still think Herrera might have a little more life in him. He can't go up against an elite level fighter, but against a second tier fighter for a vacant title or something, he might really have a shot. So that's what it was Friday. And that was in Indio, which is an hour or so away from LA. Saturday night here, downtown Los Angeles at the Microsoft Theater, we had the Top Rank on ESPN card. And I saw a bunch of you guys there at the fight, man. It was good to bump into so many of you guys and just talk boxing for a while. Had a blast doing that. So thank you for coming up, for those of you who saw me coming up and saying hi, shaking hands, taking pictures, talking about the fights, talking about the fight game in general, talking some shit about some of the crazy characters in the media business, all of it. Had a great time, man. The arena itself seats about 8,000 people. Top Rank announced that the attendance was just a little over 4,000. Now, I went around and asked a bunch of people, because I must have bumped into at least a dozen of you guys that went there as fans that I, just ran into. And I asked a lot of you, did you get a comp? What? And you all said that you paid. I didn't run into one person there that said they were comped. In fact, it's a theater, right? And the bottom, so they had a ring here and then this whole section here, because usually, there's a stage where they have the theater and then the stands, the lower bowl, and then there's some upper deck areas where there's like little, I guess, suites or boxes, right, where you can sit up a little bit higher. That whole upper section was closed off. They closed it off, lights turned off, curtains up, completely blocked it off. So I don't think Top Rank was trying to create any illusion that this thing sold more than it did. They blocked off the whole upper section and weren't giving out comps to people up there and stuff like some other entities do. Now, it's possible that some people were comped. I just didn't run into any, and I didn't hear anything about that. So if any of you did go to that event and you were comped or you got a discount ticket or something, let me know. I'm curious. I'm legitimately curious, because I didn't run into anybody. As far as I know, the 4,100 or so people that went paid. Now, I know that most of you guys were all out at the concessions drinking beers up until the ESPN cards started, because the theater was very empty during the preliminary fights. There's maybe 1,000 people in there, but it did fill in. And I remember sitting, across from the ring. So like the rings here, I talked about that bowl here, and then they had the media section right on the other side, right where the cameras and everything were. It was kind of smashed together, but I was right up by the ring, and you can see the ring was propped up. You look down at the theater. It's like you're on a stage. Literally, we were on a stage looking down at you guys, and it looked full. The whole bottom section looked full to me for the co-main before the main event. So it felt like there was a legitimate crowd of 4,000. Now, is that a huge draw for Lomachenko? No, but look, they wanted Orlando Salido. They were going to fight him, Mexican fighter who's fought here in Southern California, LA area a bunch of times, who's very well known here. They wanted to do that fight. At the last second, he decides he's going to turn down career high money. They got to do something. They have this date. It's a strange venue. I don't think they wanted to go to the Microsoft Theater. It's not a boxing venue. I can't think of many big boxing cards that have ever went there, or like elite level fighters. Usually it's club shows that go there, if anything. So it was a strange venue. Last second, opponent that not a lot of people knew about. A lot of the Mexican fan base that would have came out for Salido skipped this one. They had Ray Beltran on there to try to help with that, but Ray Beltran's not Orlando Salido, right? So you think Orlando Salido just fought in the fight of the year against Francisco Vargas at StubHub. That wasn't that long ago, so that's still in everyone's minds. He did score a win over Lomachenko. Like, I think this thing would have sold differently. It would have played out differently on TV if they got Salido. But with Marriaga, all things considered, to do 4,000, not bad. Not great. You can't say Lomachenko's a draw. But guys, he's a 130-pound Ukrainian. I mean, that's going to be a hard sell. I think that what Top Rank needs to do is look at what Gennady Golovkin did, what K2 Promotions did with Golovkin. Fight way more often. And as I mentioned earlier, they're going to try to get him back in the ring in December. Get him back on TV, fighting often. He's speaking English. He's doing interviews on TV in English now. He did the post-fight presser in English. That's going to help endear him to the casual fans. It's a slow build, but he's kind of at that place that Gennady Golovkin was at 2-3 years ago, when he was still trying to build himself up. And that's what they're going to have to do with Loma. But okay, let's talk about the actual fights. This thing was supposed to go live on ESPN at 7 Pacific time, 10 o'clock Eastern. One problem. The NFL Hall of Fame induction ceremony was going on, and everybody at the Hall of Fame in the NFL, when they get up there and give their speech, they talk for a freaking hour. So that was running late. But at the same time, the preliminary fights were running late at the theater anyway. So the show was already kind of all over the place. So ESPN shows the preliminary fight. I can't remember the two fighters' names. It was the last preliminary fight. It ended up being a pretty good scrap over on ESPN2. They let people know you got to go over to ESPN2 to see boxing. Well, you turn on ESPN2, you're expecting Ray Beltran versus Brian Vasquez. Nope. Preliminary fight. It was good that the preliminary fight was entertaining, and it was. But people, again, already you've thrown everything off. Now, eventually, I believe it was after 11 o'clock Eastern time, Ray Beltran and Brian Vasquez starts, and then they go over to ESPN. So you're switching networks, you're not, it's different fighters, right? All this stuff. It's kind of chaotic and all over the place. And then Beltran wins a majority decision over Brian Vasquez over 10 rounds, 96-94 twice, 2 judges have it, and 1 judge had it 95-95. I was cool with both those scores. I thought that Beltran probably just eked this fight out, just barely did a little bit more. I scored it for him 96-94 myself, ringside. But Vasquez did a very good job. He did what he had to do, but not a very entertaining fight. It was sloppy at times. Beltran got cut, so there was blood, but it was from headbutts. Vasquez, his job was basically to be a spoiler, and that's what he did. There were times where Beltran looked flustered and confused and frustrated, and you saw it in his face and in his body language. It just didn't read well ringside, and I'm assuming, I didn't see it on TV, but I'm assuming it wasn't very entertaining through the TV. The rule generally is if it sucks in person, it probably is even worse on TV. So Beltran comes away with this win, okay? But it's funny, and I mentioned this in my ringside recap video, so I won't go into it too much, but Tiffany and I bumped into Abel Sanchez backstage, and he was just hanging out. And, there were some other media guys that will grab their camera and stick it in his face. But me and Tiffany just talked to him. We were just like, what's up, man? We were just basically shooting the shit with them for 20, 30 minutes. And we were just talking about different fights, boxing, what's going on with this and that. And he talked about Brian Vasquez, and he told us. He was like, because I was thinking, hey, man, how many rounds is Vasquez going to last with Beltran? Because, Vasquez, I think he's coming up in weight. He hasn't fought. He's been inactive. He doesn't punch very hard. And Abel told me, no, man, that fight's going the distance. And he's going to give Vasquez a lot of problems. I was like, I don't know, man. He was right. Abel knows what the fuck he's talking about. So Beltran wins. Okay. Let's quickly talk about Beltran. He got flat out robbed in 2013 when he fought Ricky Burns. He clearly beat Ricky Burns and should have had a title in that fight. He got robbed. And I think he got a little jaded at that point. He had another chance at the title in 2015, but he doped and he got caught. Since that doping conviction and suspension, he's 5-0 with 4 knockouts. This is by far the worst performance of that time, but this is also by far the best opponent since he's returned and since he's been part of VADA's drug testing program. So I'm not casting aspersions, just putting it out there, okay? What's next for him? Clearly, Top Rank put Beltran and Lomachenko on the same card because if they can't get fights made, they maybe want to match them together. Now, I think that'd be a horrible mistake. If you bring Lomachenko back in December against Raimundo Beltran, fans are going to be pissed. They were already pissed off about this opponent, Miguel Marriaga, who I rate higher than Raimundo Beltran in their respective divisions. So that's not the way to go. For the record, Bob Arum said in an interview, and Bob Arum, you can't believe half the shit that comes out of his mouth. I understand that. But he said that their plan for Beltron is to fight for a world title at 135. If I were them, I'd be looking right at Flanagan. And I'd be going laser tractor beams right at Flanagan. That's a winnable fight. And Beltran's fought over there before and got robbed. I think this time the judges would be more fair to him. So Arum said if Beltran wins a title at lightweight, then him and Lomachenko will fight. I'm cool with that. Especially if it's a preview to a fight with Mikey Garcia, right? I'm cool with that. But let's pump the brakes on doing that next. Now, in the main event, Vasyl Lomachenko improves to 9-1 with 7 knockouts, scoring a 7th round stoppage over Miguel Marriaga. Dropped him in the 3rd, dropped him in the 7th. The corner stopped it at the end of the 7th round. I think the commission officials were stepping in to stop it anyway because it really turned into a one-sided beatdown. Okay, so this is pretty much what we expected from Lomachenko. I thought it might go a couple more rounds. I thought it might end up going to like the 8th, 9th, maybe even 10th round. He was even more dominant than I thought he would be. I was at Marriaga's last fight against Oscar Valdez, where he was winning that fight early on and really coming on late in that fight before Valdez dropped him. And, that was an even fight in the 9th, 10th round before he got dropped. Marriaga was coming forward in that fight. He was stalking. In this fight, he was backing up. He did a little bit coming forward in the 1st round, and as soon as he saw what he was in against, he started retreating. I haven't seen Marriaga fight. I've seen several of his fights. Never seen him fight like that. And, he tried a few different things. It looked like in the 2nd, 3rd round, he was trying to set some traps, get Loma to come in and hit him with something, off balance. He landed a couple of shots here and there. But there was a moment in the 3rd round where Loma, kind of dropped his hands and talked a little trash and jawed at him. And he got Marriaga to come to him and landed a 1-2 and dropped him. And at that point, Marriaga just like, holy shit, there's nothing I can do here. And 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round, it was pretty much just Lomachenko toying with him. So this fight, did it prove anything? Did it improve Lomachenko's pound-for-pound status or any of that? No. But I didn't really go on Twitter yesterday, on Sunday, but today, Monday, I get to the office, I turn on Twitter, check my timeline, and I see just a bunch of criticism. Just, who, the usual suspects, just ripping Lomachenko as if he's been fighting scrubs for years and charging people money and going on pay-per-view or making ridiculous demands. The guy has 10 professional fucking fights. He's fought Nicholas Walters, Gary Russell Jr. He fought Orlando Salido in his 2nd fight. He's fought Roman Gonzalez or Roman Martinez. And Marriaga is no slouch. Yeah, he was coming off a loss. I get it. Those of you saying, he's coming up in weight. Well, Lomachenko is really a 126-pounder anyway, but I hear you. I hear you. Guys, he's 10 fights in. He's got a pretty damn good resume for 10 fights in. Now, if the next fight is against Beltron, I'll be the first guy to criticize. If the next fight, and again, I'm going to go back to Bob Arum. In a recent interview, he said Lomachenko's next fight will either be against Guillermo Rigondeaux or Orlando Salido or Miguel Berchelt. Those are the 3 guys they're going after. If it's not against one of those 3 in December, I'll be the first guy to criticize it. All right? Keep me honest. Remind me of that shit if it doesn't happen. But if it's one of those 3 guys, some of you need to shut the fuck up. If it's Orlando Salido, I know some of you are like, he's going to win. Yeah? Lomachenko had 1 loss in the amateurs, right? He got to avenge that loss. He got 1 loss in the pros so far, and it's a very controversial loss for a litany of reasons, and he wants to avenge it. Give the motherfucker a chance to avenge his loss. And Orlando Salido's gonna bring it. If he wants to avenge that loss, guys, I think he has the right to do it. It's going to be on ESPN. It's not going to cost you a dime. It's probably going to be here in Southern California, but potentially if it's on a Pacquiao Horn 2 undercard, maybe it's in Australia. I don't know. But if that's where they go next, I don't see anything wrong with that. If they go to Guillermo Rigondeaux, people have been bitching about that matchup for years. Rigondeaux won't shut up on Twitter. If they do that fight, Rigondeaux is going to have to move up because Lomachenko wants to defend his title. So it's going to be at 130. And a lot of you are going to complain about that fight anyway because it's at 130 pounds. But you know what? If they do that matchup, you got to shut the fuck up. At least he's fighting the guy you want him to fight. If it's Miguel Berchelt, who I think is a big challenge for Lomachenko, you got to give him a lot of props. And in fact, he's a much tougher opponent at this stage than Guillermo Rigondeaux is. Yeah, I said it. If Guillermo Rigondeaux moved up to 130 pounds and fought Miguel Berchelt, guess what? He'd lose. Yeah, I said it. I didn't stutter or blink. Berchelt would beat Rigondeaux at 130 pounds. So I think that's the best challenge of those three. That's who I'd like to see him fight. But if he doesn't, if he fights one of the other two, for business reasons, I get it. Either way, let's give him time and see if he makes one of those fights, all right? So that's what took place last week. Now, there's not a lot going on this upcoming weekend. So we're going to skip a week, and I'm going to preview what's coming up next week, all right? Because we're going to be off the following week. Next Tuesday, August 15th in Kyoto, Japan, Shinsake Yamanaka defending his WBC 118-pound title for the 13th time. This will be his 13th defense against Mexican Luis Neri, who is undefeated, southpaw. Yamanaka's a southpaw as well, so you got a matchup here of two southpaws. Won a title eliminator in his last fight. Has fought all of his fights in Mexico. I believe this will be his first fight outside of Mexico. This is an interesting matchup. Look, Yamanaka won the vacant title, the vacant bantamweight title, I think in 2011. He's defended it now a dozen times. 13th defense. He's 34 years old. Coming into this fight with a record of 27-0-2, 19 knockouts. Going up against the young Mexican kid with a record of 23-0 with 17 knockouts. Only 22 years old. So, we've seen records padded in Mexico before. We've seen it a million times. And some of these guys travel for the first time and you see why they hadn't left Mexico. But we've seen some of these guys travel before and shock the world, right? On paper, Yamanaka is supposed to win this fight by decision. And you have to think that this fight being in Japan, it's going to be hard for Neri to win a decision. If I'm him, if I'm his team, I'm coming out guns blazing from the opening round and you're taking that title from the champion. I think this is going to be an interesting fight. I think it's going to be more competitive than a lot of you think. If you can find a stream of this one, Tuesday, August 15th, make sure you check that out. Japanese boxing, man. A lot of great cards over there. Great scene in Japan right now that a lot of fight fans are missing out on here in the West. You guys need to find these streams where you can watch these fights live online, or even if you go back and watch them on YouTube later or something, you're missing out on some great action and some great talent over there in Japan right now, I'm telling you. So next Saturday, August 19th, Top Rank Boxing comes back to ESPN with a loaded card, a great card from the Pinnacle Bank Arena in Lincoln, Nebraska. This isn't Omaha, but it's, I want to say 45 minutes or so from Omaha. And so Crawford and all his Omaha people will be coming down there and packing the house for this one. In the main event, Terence Crawford putting his junior welterweight titles on the line against Julius Indongo and his junior welterweight titles. These guys are undefeated. Combined, they are 53-0 with 33 knockouts. Crawford is 29 years old. For some reason, he just looks and feels and sounds older than that. But he's still only 29 years old. 5'8", 70-inch reach. Indongo, 34 years old. Got a late start to boxing. 5'10", 71-inch reach, and he's a southpaw. So we've seen Crawford switch to southpaw a bunch of times and befuddle his opponents. I wonder how that's going to look against Indongo, who already fights southpaw. I wonder if Crawford will want to stay orthodox. I don't know. Or maybe switch back and forth. We might see him. His pattern has been first round orthodox, and then usually second round, he's switching it. So it'll be interesting to see what he does against Indongo. Because if he's coming at you as a southpaw, your best weapon is going to be that straight right hand, through his guard. And Indongo does come straight in. I look back at Crawford's record, just him against tall guys. Victor Postol is 5'11". John Molina, 5'10". Bredis Prescott, remember him? 5'11". Here's what I find interesting. Now he got Molina out of there, beat him pillar to post, but Molina is what he is. Bredis Prescott and Victor Postol went the distance. He wasn't able to hurt those guys. I know he dropped Postol. Can't remember if he dropped Prescott. But we haven't seen Crawford fight a guy that tall, that big, but also as athletic as Indongo. I think Indongo is more athletic than those fighters I named. He's also a southpaw. I like his length. He uses his length very well. So this is an interesting matchup to me that I think a lot of people, again, think this is going to be this one-sided annihilation. I actually think it's going to be competitive. Of course, though, I favor Crawford down the stretch to either win a decision or possibly a late stoppage. I think he might be able to get that done. If he wants to make a statement on ESPN in front of millions of fans, he needs to go for the knockout. Indongo, again, from Namibia, fights in Russia against Edward Troyanovsky last December, grabs the title. Very next fight against Ricky Burns in Scotland this April, grabs another title. Now he's coming to Nebraska. We need more of this in boxing. What we don't know about Indongo is just how for real he is. Beating Troyanovsky, beating Burns in their backyard, that is impressive. But those guys are nowhere near the level of fighter that Crawford is. They're not even like Troyanovsky and Burns are, and I'm not saying this disrespectfully, but they're not elite fighters. They're not what I would call A-level fighters, right? Maybe borderline top 10 in their divisions at one point. And I know Burns has won several titles, but as I discussed earlier, he's won robberies and everything else. But those guys aren't even what I would call, A-level talent, right? So he's, for Indongo, he's going from like a B-level, B+ level fighter to an A+. I mean, he's taking a massive leap here. This isn't even B to A. This is going to elite level. Crawford is one of the pound for pound top 5 fighters in the world, in my opinion. And I think is going to further solidify that position with this fight. I did an episode of 10 Count for Undisputed Champion Network previewing this fight. And during with the filming, I said that I think going into the championship rounds, this fight could be even on the cards. That may have been a little bit of an overstatement, but I just feel that there's a chance here. Indongo might show us something. He might show that it wasn't smoke and mirrors against Troyanovsky and Burns. It wasn't just matchmaking, right place, right time. There really is something to this guy. We might see him really, really show us something that proves he's A-level, and maybe Burns and Troyanovsky are here, and Indongo's here, and Crawford's just here. That's what I just have this gut feeling. That's what we're going to get. Will the cards be even after 8, 9, 10 rounds? I don't know about that, especially in Lincoln, Nebraska. I think it's going to be competitive, though. And maybe the cards are even after 4 rounds, after 6 rounds. But I do think Crawford's going to take over later in this fight. And there is the possibility that he catches Indongo coming in late. He lands a good counter shot and hurts him. And then when Crawford gets guys hurt, he knows how to close the show. He jumps right on you. He's like a shark that smells blood, man. So if he can hurt Indongo in the early part of a round and jump on him, he maybe could get him out of there. If that doesn't happen, this might end up looking kind of like the Postol fight, just a little more competitive. That might be how it looks, If it does look like that, that's going to be bad for Crawford's brand. You know, Crawford and Indongo were at the Microsoft Theater the other night for the Lomachenko card. And I guess I didn't see the interview. I could just kind of see from afar, you know, not that far. It was pretty close, but I obviously didn't see their interview on TV, but several of you tweeted out, I saw it, that they were horrible. Crawford just does not have a very dynamic personality. And he has a confrontational personality with the media. You know, the relationship he has with the media is just kind of odd. So he's going to be a guy that's just going to have to look spectacular in the ring and score stoppages, score knockouts to further build his brand outside of Nebraska. So let's see if he can do that against Indongo. This is for the WBC, WBA, WBO, IBF, IBO, and Ring Magazine belts. That's freaking awesome. In the co-feature, Alexander Gvozdyk, who is 13-0 with 11 knockouts. He's coming off his TKO3 win over Uniesky Gonzalez in April. He's going up against a Texas fighter, Craig Baker, who is 17-1 with 13 knockouts. Really hasn't fought anybody. The one time in his career he stepped up to fight a name, quote unquote, only boxing diehards would know this name, but Edward Rodriguez, fought him in 2015 and he lost, was annihilated in 3 rounds, completely dominated. So not much to Craig Baker. So this is pretty much a layup for Gvozdyk. And look, they're trying to build him up. He's still a prospect, but I don't really understand what this fight does for him other than get him some work. Last November, yeah, it was on the the Ward Kovalev undercard. He beat Isaac Chilemba, right? He handled Isaac Chilemba pretty well. And then in April, he beats Gonzalez, and now he fights Baker. This is kind of a stay busy fight, and it's a downgrade in opposition, in my opinion. So Top Rank, not sure what they're trying to accomplish with this, other than getting Gvozdyk on TV and trying to have that big splash, that big knockout win in front of millions of people to build the brand, right? This is a guy who won a bronze medal in the London Games in 2012, speaks English, speaks it very, very well, pretty good personality, does well in front of the cameras and stuff. So, you know, I get this matchup in that way. You get one layup, dude. You get one layup in your debut on the network, but after this, gotta step it up. Gotta step it up big time. Also on this card, Mike Reed, an undefeated welterweight from DC, who's 22-0. He'll be on the card. Nicholas Walters, Mike Alvarado, Dillian White, and Bryant Jennings. If they both win, could we maybe see the two of them fight? Who the hell wouldn't love to see Dillian White and Bryant Jennings fight in the future? That'd be awesome. Also, Shakur Stevenson. So, look, top to bottom, this card has a lot of talent. Main event's pretty evenly matched, but all the other guys are kind of getting layups. But if you're going to this card, you're getting great value for your ticket price. Either way, good card here from Top Rank. I like this a lot, and I'd like to see some of these guys matched against each other if possible, if they look good in this card. All right, that's it, guys. We'll be back after that ESPN card with Top Rank, Crawford-Indongo. TNC will be back. We'll be off for a week. In the meantime, let me know what you guys think. Like, comment, share, subscribe. You know the deal. I'll see you at the fights.